I'm still trying to decide if I'm going to hold this thing. I'm going to try and use the holder up here. No, I'm going to let you hold it. Okay. I want my hands free. I'm funny that way. All right. So I think when we were starting to brainstorm the content for this session today, I think I told the team that I thought that the business analyst is a lot like a universal translator. Any Trekkies here? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah? You know, as I've thought about it a little bit more, I really kind of think it's more like a universal translator on steroids, right? Because it's not just taking what one person says and translating the business to the technical, it's also adding some intelligence behind that, right? The ability to find a common good, to understand where each party is coming from. And I've spent several years in my career as an analyst in a variety of functions. Universally, I've found that the ability to listen, and I really mean to listen, to make people understand that they're being heard is key. In the context of a project, being able to get to what the customer needs, and Becky touched on this in terms of qualities, that is really quintessential. And not what they say they want. We talk about this a lot in our shop today. Getting our customers to stop talking about the technology. Technology's cool, we want this, we want that. Really trying to get our folks to instead ask their customers, what does your business do? What are you doing for your customers? What sorts of problems are you having? What sorts of things are you trying to solve? If we get this wrong as technologists, the whole solution, it's wrong. It's not going to meet the customer's needs. Really, when we look at skills for a business analyst, to be able to properly frame and structure the problem, that's about 75% of the effort that's required to come to an appropriate solution. Here, the ability to research, your analytical skills, your big picture thinking. These are going to be key to being able to properly frame the question. What is the issue that we're looking at? To really identify the cause and address it appropriately. We often think of analysts as being very logical folks, right? Analytical minded, and that's as analysts, that's where we draw our strength, really. But as you can see from what we've listed here as skills, this is one facet. I think at least I know as an analyst, I've always identified very keenly with that analytical side. And as I progressed in my career, I see that there's so much more, right? A great analyst has very well-honed soft skills. They are very people-focused. They're very customer-focused, which is sort of counterintuitive to what we think of when we think of the word analyst. But these are qualities that make really good analysts. They are skilled at being a diplomat, being translators and negotiators, very strong negotiation skills. They are skilled at developing relationships. Oftentimes that's really how we get to what needs to be done, is developing those relationships, particularly where we don't have direct managerial control. We're peddling on influence, right? We're trading on influence and how we relate to people, right? So good analysts are very good at establishing rapport and developing relationships. And they're very strong communicators. Of course, we expect good business analysts to understand the technology, have the technological acumen, right? The good ones, they understand the technology's potential, but they also understand its limitations, what can't be done, and appropriately set expectations. Great analysts, though, have business acumen in addition to the technical acumen. They understand the business, and where they don't understand the business, they go out and learn and ask questions. They're very quick learners. And this is something that Becky had alluded to in talking about where she started, right? It was well, we have this need. Go in and learn, right? And I think really great analysts are just curious sorts. They want to understand how things work, not just from the technology side, but from what the business is trying to accomplish. You know, a good business analyst learns business concepts, and they can quickly relate them to the specific needs of the project. So, you know, hungry for knowledge and understanding, great business analysts are also persistent. They're dogged. They don't give up. They don't accept status quo. They ask lots of questions until they get to where it is that they need to be, and really strive to understand all perspectives to be able to develop and propose a robust solution. So now that we've talked a little bit about the skill set, let's talk about some of the tools that are available to us as analysts. And this is not meant to be exhaustive, nor will I be going into any kind of depth, but just to kind of give you a flavor for what's available and hopefully whet your appetite to learn more. Let's go ahead, next one, please. All right. First one I'd like to touch on is SWOT analysis. And most of you familiar with SWOT analysis, have used it, right? Where we're looking at strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Strengths and weaknesses being what's internal to the organization, opportunities and threats being what's external to the organization. Now the end result of this analysis is interesting, and you know, a lot of your stakeholders love to see this, but I think what is especially nice about this is the journey that you take as you're doing the analysis, because you learn an awful lot that is really foundational to what you're trying to drive. Another tool when we're looking at analytical process is a framework called the IDEAL framework. I'm skipping ahead in my notes because I'm backwards on this stuff. Move some things around. All right, you think back, at some point you've been exposed to the rules of journalism, right? Probably somewhere in high school where you had to write a paper, some such stuff, right? Rules from journalism. Who, what, where, when, and why. When we can answer these questions about a problem that's sitting in front of us, we know a great deal more of the story that we can address. IDEAL is a framework to help us get to this and actually evaluate some of the solutions that come out of it. So from IDEAL, it's an acronym, I being identify the problem. So recognize that there's an issue out there that needs to be addressed. The D would be define. Define that problem a little bit further. What is it? What is causing it? Can we get to the root of it? Once we're able to get to the root cause, we can examine options that address those root causes and identify some appropriate solutions. A is for act, essentially to develop that plan. And L, look at the consequences. In other words, do your risk assessment for the various options. A couple of other tools here, pros and cons and Brainstorm, and I'm assuming most of you are familiar with these as well, right? Pros and cons used to look at the advantages and disadvantages of a given solution or proposal. This is really fabulous when you can line them all up and compare side to side so that you can make trade-offs based on risk assessment. Brainstorming, also a very useful tool just in generating ideas or solutions, and it can be done individually, it can be done in a group setting. The fundamental piece here is that you want to toss out ideas without judging them so you can generate as many ideas as possible. So later we go on to evaluate them. Affinity Diagram is actually a really fabulous way of taking what you get out of a brainstorming exercise, and it's great for organizing the many pieces that you get back out of it so that you can discern common themes, right? And for looking for relationships. Cause and effect. This is another tool that's really good at getting at the essence of what is causing the issue to begin with, or the problem. Fishbone diagram is what you see here, and fundamentally it helps isolate what is generating the problem, so it gives you options on how to address it. You could attack a problem from many different angles, and depending upon where you would expect to get the most return or the effort is where you would want to address the issue to correct the problem. Flowcharts, Swimlanes, these are ways to look at process, right? Pretty much flowchart is an easy to understand diagram that shows steps in a process and how they fit together. Your swim lane is like your next step, which brings in your stakeholders so you can see who's doing what over the course of a process. And finally, tools that we might look to would be alternative thinking tools. Lateral thinking. This is really trying to look at a problem at different angles. I mean, analytical people tend to look at problem solving as a linear thing to go out and do, and quite frankly, that doesn't always give you the solution. Lateral thinking sort of turns that on its head, and there are actually a number of different models and approaches out there. So some of them are things like provocation, in things like just wishful thinking and exaggeration. These are things that aren't necessarily logical, but they can help generate different ideas to a solution that you wouldn't necessarily see if you were just approaching it from a logical standpoint. Contrary thinking is just one form of lateral thinking, and really it is looking at a problem which is in directions that are directly opposed to what people think of in general as a solution. Fundamentally, quote here from Humphrey Neal, who did quite a bit of work here in contrary thinking. When everybody thinks alike, everybody's likely to be wrong, or everyone's likely to be wrong. So there's opportunities to look at different ideas that not everybody is following, to come up with different ideas. All right, so I think at this point we need to hand back to the moderators to talk about solutions unless we've got some questions. Thank you.
Okay, we're done talking. It's your turn. So what we're going to do is do some activities. So what we'd like to do is sort of split the room. All of the tables on this side of the room are going to take on your scenario 1, and you guys have scenario 2. On your tables, there's a sheet of paper with scenarios. I know most of you were looking at them when you came in. So everybody on this side, you got scenario 1, and you got scenario 2. What I'd like you to do is, as a table, read the scenario, and then there are some questions afterward that are in the discussion section, and come up with some answers to those questions. And I'm going to give you each 10 minutes, or all 10 minutes, to think about it, discuss it, come up with an answer, decide who's going to speak for your table, and we'll have one person from each table talk about kind of what you think are the best answers to those questions, and then we'll let the panel respond as well. Okay, go.